Hello, I'm Joan Brown. It's my great pleasure to host this segment of the Marin Women's Hall of Fame show. Since 1987, the Hall of Fame has inducted over 140 Marin women of distinction, women who have made immense contributions to the County of Marin and its residents, as well as to the world beyond. Honorees have distinguished themselves in many fields: education, science, business, philanthropy, the arts, politics, law, philosophy, health, and religion. Each honoree has been a force for positive change in our community. It is a great privilege to acknowledge and document their contributions. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce Lynn O'Malley Taylor, who's being honored in the 2019 Hall of Fame for her remarkable work in the judicial system. So welcome, Lynn.
Thank you.
And let's begin where it all began, with your family, what your family was like, the people who influenced you in your early life, and incidences, experiences, circumstances that helped set you on the path that you have pursued.
So my parents met at the University of Arizona when there were 2,200 students there. And they married, and I was born in 1943, right before my dad was sent off to the Second World War. And when he came back, we moved to Phoenix, Arizona. So I was raised in Phoenix, Arizona, and went to Central High School, and then escaped Arizona and went to Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and then to...
Was that Colorado College for women then?
No,
No.
It was co-ed. And then in 1963, I transferred to the University of Arizona to get a degree in education. My parents were amazing, because they were always very, very supportive, and basically said, you could do anything that you want to do as long as you try hard. And they expected us to do well in school, and they were just there for us all the time. It was fabulous. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And when my dad died, she became a medical transcriptionist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was a really hard work, because you had to learn all the medical terminology.
Right.
But yeah, they were very supportive all the way through.
What were their personalities like?
My dad was a lot of fun. He was very happy to be Irish. And he always came home and he was in a happy mood, and he would bring new music and put it on, and we'd all sing to it. I remember Mac the Knife on the record player, and we would sit down at the table, and he'd take a knife and go bing, 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 and then start the music. I mean, he was a lot of fun.
And my mom?
My mom had the most amazing laugh, and she was always doing funny things.
Really? So
yeah.
you had a lot of lightness in your family.
Oh yeah. She was a lot of fun. Yeah, we had great tales of growing up together.
So you taught school for what?
I taught
6 years
school
or so?
from 1964
to 1970. So that's
to
6
1970.
years.
Yeah, and I first taught at All Saints Episcopal Day School in Phoenix, Arizona. And that's where I met my husband, Bruce, because the kindergarten I was the first grade teacher, and the kindergarten teacher was his sister-in-law.
Ah!
So that's how we met. We were a blind date. And then I went from there to Richmond Unified School District, which was a whole new experience in San Pablo. It was a very poor area. It was the first year they started the busing, and I had a most wonderful group of kids. They were fabulous. And then from there, I went to Cathedral School for Boys, and when I was their first grade teacher. The very first year they opened the actual school building, and that was a lot of fun.
So you transitioned from education to law. So tell us kind of how that happened and why you decided to make that transition, and were you a full-time student, and how did you work it out with your kids and all of that?
So, well, when I first started, I didn't have any we didn't have any of our own children. So I was determined to pay for it myself. So I went to law school nights, taught school in the daytime.
And you went to?
San Francisco Law School. I'm not even sure if it exists anymore, but I went there to San Francisco Law School, and it was at a time when there were 125 of us in the class, and it was look to your left, look to your right, one of you will be here in the end. And I think they graduated about 25 out of the 125.
And when you look to the right and you look to the left, how many women were there?
There were maybe about a quarter.
Really?
There were quite a few women actually that were working in the daytime and going to school at night. There were police officers, there were probation officers, there were all different people that were working. They couldn't do it any other way, or they chose to do it at nighttime and not give up their jobs. Mostly old, we weren't all young. We were young, but we were also working.
Weren't new graduates.
We weren't new graduates.
So you continued to teach and go to law school?
I continued to teach and go to law school.
Wow, that's a heavy load. And then?
And yeah, because you ended up studying at every possible opportunity, like in the broom closet at Cathedral School for Boys in the daytime, and then after work, and then after school, because you went to school from 6 until 9 o'clock at night.
So then you graduated?
Yes.
And you practiced law?
Yes.
And was it hard for you to get a job in law at that time?
Not. It wasn't for me. I'm not sure if it was for other people, but I was really lucky. I had a friend who was in law school with me who introduced me to Jim Kennedy, and Jim called and said, come work with me.
And he was in?
He was in San Rafael and general practice in San Rafael with Steve Robertson and George Peterson, and we just had a great time together.
And so in your law practice, what kind of law did you practice?
Mostly civil, some criminal, but I actually did bankruptcies. It was general practice. I plastered a ship in Admiralty once. You know what that is?
No.
Well, when a ship comes into harbor, if they don't pay for the goods that they've purchased, you can put a notice on the ship that keeps them from moving from town.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was kind of fun.
Did you literally plaster it? Or
Well, I didn't do it myself, but I did all the paperwork to get it done.
Okay, so 39 years old. You've switched from teaching.
Right.
You've been practicing law.
Yes.
And then, oh my goodness, there is an incumbent judge up for election and a vacant seat, and one of your friends decided to run for the vacant seat, so you decided not to go for that one. So you launched a campaign for a sitting judge, and you and another candidate threw your hats into the ring. And what happened? What was that like? How did people respond to you? Just tell us about that experience.
Well, it was exciting, for sure. It was my first experience having anything to do with any kind of election whatsoever. And at that point, because I filed literally on the last possible day that you could file, all of the campaign managers that had experience in Marin County were taken. So fortunately, I met you at a coffee, and you introduced me to a young woman who was working at the Volunteer Center of Marin, single mom, needed some work, and so I hired her. And we just figured out what we needed to do, and we did it.
I think she was working at Civic Center Volunteers.
Yes, yes.
Which is different than the Volunteer Center.
Oh, is it? Okay, good. Yes. Sorry, I got it confused.
That's all right. No, that's all right. I got to plug Civic Center Volunteers. My career for 33 years.
Yes.
So then what happened? So you've got this woman.
Yes.
And she's running your campaign, and you're going out and meeting people, and what are people saying?
Well, some were very gracious, and others, it's probably the first time I experienced any prejudice to speak of in my life, because both men and women would come up to me and say, I'd never vote for a woman for judge. And then some people were just kind of rude, like I was passing out brochures in front of one of the shopping centers, I think it was Penny's, and a guy came out and he said, well, what's your brochure for? And I told him, and he spit on the sidewalk in front of me. So you had to learn not to be too sensitive about these.
Was that hard for you, or do you normally have kind of a thick skin on that stuff?
Well, it was surprising more than anything else. I just didn't know that was out there, and I didn't realize that people felt so strongly. The political views were very, very strong.
So, but a judgeship is a nonpartisan position.
Yes.
And you had not experienced prejudice in law school or in practicing the law?
Not that I was aware of. Okay. I mean, I felt pretty lucky that I was able to practice, and I didn't notice any prejudice.
And so what happened in the election?
Well, in the election, there was a primary, and the city attorney was the third opponent. He didn't win in the primary, but he helped me win the general election.
So in the primary, who had the most votes? Do you remember?
I don't. I think probably the sitting judge did.
Mm-hmm. And so then you had to do a runoff.
Yes. And then I had to hire a new campaign manager because my first one got a really good job. Well, it was helpful because she got some great experience. And so Barbara Heller, who went on to become a city councilwoman in San Rafael,
and she was also a Civic Center volunteer early.
Was she? Yep. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh my gosh. So Barbara Heller helped me, and we just figured out what we needed to do and got it done.
And you won.
And I won.
And you were the first elected woman judge in Marin County.
True. Yeah, it was exciting.
And how did your male colleagues welcome you?
They were actually very helpful welcoming me. I remember my very first trial, and Gary Thomas gave me a wonderful script, and he was very helpful, and I went in, and the courtroom was packed, I think with people sort of looking to see if I could do the job, Could I do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah.
And how long were you a sitting judge in Marin County?
For 21 years.
I guess you could do the job.
I guess.
Okay, moving along. Throughout your career, you had practiced civil and were a judge in your judicial career. You'd served in every department of the court, and criminal, civil, juvenile, probate cases. But then you developed a specialty in civil law, focusing on mediation and settlement conferences. So what led to that specialization, and what did you see as a judge that raised that as a priority for dealing with legal issues?
Well, as an attorney, I knew how helpful judges could be in helping and getting cases resolved, and I thought that was part of my job when I went into the civil division, was to spend as much time as possible with the attorneys, working on trying to get the case settled, because really their clients wanted to settle the case most of the time.
How does a judge help people reach a settlement?
Well, you use a lot of mediation techniques, and I decided I was going to develop some. First thing, I took Steve Rosenberg's mediation course. He's in Mill Valley, and then I took the beginning and advanced courses at Harvard, and you just do it.
No, but what
are the skills?
What is it that you do? Yeah.
Well, as a judge, you do a lot of listening, and you you let people tell their story, which you can't really do in a trial because it's question answer, question answer. But it's important for the parties to be able to tell their story. So you let each side tell their story, and then you tell them their story back to make sure that you didn't miss something. And then you start looking at how can we settle the case? What are the areas where we agree? And what are the areas that we're having difficulty with? And eventually, you go back and forth, and hopefully you can reach an agreement. And, you know, it's a compromise. So nobody walks away completely happy, but it's the best thing because the parties actually have a choice in how the case is decided. When you go to a jury, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't have any choice in the outcome.
So when you focused on this mediation conference, did every case that came to you, were you doing mediation, or was it as part of your regular judicial calendar and you would give people the choice? Oh,
no, I never gave him a choice.
So
every case was set for a settlement conference. You had to have a settlement conference before you could get a trial date.
And is that true for all the judges?
I don't know because it was true for us when we were doing individual calendaring. And what was great about Marin County is we have bench bar conferences. So we have a plaintiff's attorney, a defense attorney, and the judge. And together, the three of us would work with the parties. And it was very effective.
What percentage of the time would you guess people settled rather than went to trial?
Maybe 80 to 95%.
Really?
90%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Most of the
So that's really good for everybody.
Yes.
That's and
for the public.
Yes.
And for the public because, you know, trials are long, expensive, take people's time. It's important, but the settlement is a nice way to resolve a case.
So we've kind of talked about some turning points in your career, and where you rerouted. Would you say that emphasizing the settlement conferences was one of those points when we got it, when you went from education to law? Was the settlement conference concept, would you consider that kind of a rerouting of your judicial career?
Not really. I think it was sort of part of my job. It was to do that. When you go into civil, part of your job as a judge is to do the best that you can to get the case settled if you can. Take the time. People feel like they've had their day in court if they can talk to the judge. And so I tried to participate in all the conferences. Sometimes the attorneys would get them done before I even got there. But most of the time I was participating in them. And I felt like pretty much everybody walked away happy.
Boy.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So I see you've got your Rotary button on.
I do.
And I know that Rotary and Boy Scouts of America have been two major focuses in your life. And I guess you've been on the board for the Boy Scouts for 30 years or so. And how did you get involved?
35 years.
35 years. So did you have boy children that were in Scouts, or how did this evolve? And how have these volunteer activities informed and helped you grow personally and enrich the community?
Well, we'll start with the Boy Scouts. My son was a Scout, and I learned to appreciate that it was probably the best leadership training program out there. I mean, I'll never forget the time that he was homesick in bed with a 102-degree fever, and the adults for his troop called up and said, "Could you please get Will over here? We have no idea what to do with these kids." He was running the troop, you know, so he learned a lot of great leadership skills.
Did you get him there?
No, 102 degrees. No,
good for you.
But it taught me something that I didn't really know, and so which was that it was a boy-run program at a certain point. Mm-hmm. That the boys really ran the program, mm-hmm. and developed those leadership skills with the adult supervision. But they did a great job. So I got involved with Scouts. I'm very proud of our local Marin Council because they were instrumental in getting the policy on sexual orientation changed.
Nationally?
Nationally. So they submitted the resolution to the National Council that was adopted.
That you were part of that?
Our council was part of that, yeah. So I'm very proud of that. That was an inside, let's work on this important change, and I'm very proud of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
When that was taken to the national, were there other local Scout boards that were also bringing this forward? Or
one other.
Only one other. What year was that? Do you remember?
No. I know, it's been, maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
So just you and one other brought it to the national.
But I'm sure it was in the minds of a lot of different people.
Right.
So, but it was,
I remember reading about that and what a big brouhaha that was.
Right.
And how much strife there was about it, and that some Scout organizations withdrew and disbanded, and so, well, good for you.
Yeah, and now they have introduced girls too, and my son has a pack, and he says, we have all kinds of kids in our pack.
So, girls are now Boy Scouts?
Girls can be Scouts. Girls can be in a scouting program now.
Well, that's interesting, because there's a very strong Girl Scout program.
There's a wonderful Girl Scout program. But one of the things that families are discovering is that sometimes it's easier to have all the kids in just one program because they're working, they're working and they have their kids in these activities, and so Scouts, the Boy Scout program has a lot of family activities. Mm-hmm. So they're starting to get girls that come in. So.
And your son has his own group now.
He has his own patch.
Isn't that great?
Isn't that cool?
That's very great.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Rotary.
Yes.
So has your involvement in Rotary and your leadership, I know you were president, has that informed or helped or impacted your life as a judge? And I know it impacted when your retirement might be.
Right.
But for people who don't know about Rotary, what kind of leadership and other kind of skills does that help develop, and what's the main mission of Rotary?
Well, Rotary is primarily a service organization, mm-hmm. and we raise money for local projects and international projects, and we we have a program called RILA, that is a leadership program for for teenagers, basically, and we've done lots of projects here in this county. Our Terra Linda Rotary Club did a senior citizen housing project. They did a project where we did all the new benches for Terra Linda High School. They do scholarships. And Marin Evening Rotary that I'm in now does this. We also do scholarships. We have senior citizen programs we do Thanksgiving for seniors where we invite people from homes. We do a lot of different projects, not to mention the international projects that we do.
So when you got involved in Rotary, were there a lot of other women at that time?
Not too many. I was one of two that was first admitted in 1987. It was an all-men's group, basically. And gradually, more women have been involved in Rotary, which is great, because we're doing great projects, and we bring a different perspective, I think, and we work well together, all of us. Yeah.
And lifelong friendships. I
And
know.
lifelong friendships. And one of the reasons that I joined Rotary as a judge was to get some input, to hear what was going on in the community, because they have regular speakers, and to get input from people. People would tell me, this happened to me when I went to court, or I had this experience as a juror, and is that the way it's supposed to be? So you would get some input, and hopefully you could, address some of the concerns that people had in the community.
So you've had a really impressive career, and I'm wondering what you would like for your legacy to be in Marin County.
That's a big question. I would like for my legacy to be that to give young women a chance to look at what could be really risky something and to take the risk. That if you work hard at something, it's okay to take a risk. Run for office. It's scary, but exhilarating. But exhilarating. You meet so many wonderful people doing that, people you've never known before who come out of the woodwork and help, and I think it's important to take risk. I'd like to see more, women applying for judgeships, more women, applying to serve in public office. And I think it's a great role for young attorneys to aspire to be judges. Work hard and aspire to be a judge. Get the experience, and don't be afraid to put your name in there, either for an appointment or run for an open seat.
So I know that you do rotating judging kinds of things. So you're not completely out of the law, but to conclude with, I'm wondering what are the biggest issues you see in Marin County right now, and what are your hopes for solutions or working toward a better situation around those issues in Marin?
Are you asking me about issues with the law or about general issues?
Anything.
Biggest issues. Well, I think in Marin, we need to think about housing.
Yeah.
We need to think about how to help the homeless, because unfortunately, we see a lot of them in the criminal justice system. Yeah. There is inadequate funding for appropriate programs for them. I mean, when I was working in San Francisco, I think that there were about 100 people in their jail who really should have gone to Napa, but there are no beds. Right. So we're ending up housing the mentally ill in the jail, which is really, it's not the way it should be. Right. It really isn't. I think there needs to be more funding for victims of crime. There just isn't enough. I mean, there are victims out there who, are suffering from PTSD. The amount of money that's available in the victim witness program is a drop in the bucket for the kind of therapy that they need. So those are things that I think would be good to focus on. It's not a high sale in the legislature to get funding for these programs, but it's definitely needed, and the community's better for it.
Well, and I think that there has been so much more awareness about those issues in Marin in the last few years that I see progress slowly coming in those areas. I want to thank you so much, Lynn, for sharing your stories from your incredible life with us. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in. The Marin Women's Hall of Fame is a project of the YWCA of San Francisco and Marin. If you would like to learn more about the Hall of Fame and our honorees, please visit www.mwhf.org. Thank you for watching.